are on page Kuvov. Towards the bottom third of the page, we begin on the line that starts with kuli, right down underneath the line that begins with hafshoto. Right? So we're discussing two madrigas in mochin. We will see whether we want to start from here or maybe go back a little bit. Let me just introduce where we're up to. We're talking about the inyan from mochin, the be'etzem. What are the two madrigas in mochin in general? Mochin that are pertaining to middot, and mochin that are focused on the etzem or inyan. Now, etzem or inyan really does not have any handles. Therefore, the mochin that focus, that they're able to relate to etzem or inyan, are mochin b'hafshoto, are mochin which is neshama mochin. There is not a means by which it takes the inyan and brings it down to itself. There's nothing there to grab onto. And as we said, this line begins with kuli. V'zehu b'chinas ha'mochin atzmon shelamayla mehamidus. This is the beginning of mochin atzmon. Mochin as they are unto themselves. Excuse me, shelamayla mehamidus, which is above middot. Middot means a measurement. Middot means there is a means to identify what you know, what its pertinence is. This is l'mayla mehamidus. Mochin have this capacity. Mochin have a neshama quality. And this is where we had the big challenge. Shlomo says, this sounds like brum shebiyam. Since you're taking things without any kind of discrimination. Excuse me, make the bracha before I forget. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Amen. You don't discern what you take. You take what there is to take. It sounds like brum should be yam, and we had a whole discussion about that. And this is the amazing thing. No, it is not brum should be yam. It is brum should be yam boshu, which means there is the observer's status, the observer's experience there, and you have a certain judgment as to what you see, what its significance is, and yet it's a dover atzmi, mochin atzmo. Phenomenal thing. And this is why there's a whole discussion prior to coming to this, explaining the other level in mochin. The level of mochin that's called mochin that come bilevushe hasoga. Bilevushe hasoga, in garments of comprehension, which means you have an approach. How do you relate to this? What makes you see this? What makes you recognize this? That's bilevushe hasoga. And we pointed out, Rebbe pointed out, that mochin that come in Busha Hasoga are a different dargate. This is not the essence of mochin at all. It's mochin, and it has an element of hasoga, of real hasoga of atzmi, hasogas of etzem, and yet it is mochin hashayochel middot. And this is why it's inevitable that in these mochin there is a consequence. In other words, what surfaces when you're involved in this mochin is not what you comprehend, but what its ramifications are. How does that affect your middot? And in Loshen for Chassidus, Loshen Kivas Elikim Toiv, and then even further down Kivas Elikim Li Toiv. There's a personal touch in this. This is the garment. This is the grasp element. What makes me see it? What makes me be interested in this? It affects me. Clearly, this is not the essence of mochin. I'm saying clearly this is not the essence of mochin. I don't know how clearly this is to everyone. And I don't know if not for the fact that we're being shown, we will recognize this phenomenon. Yet it is important that we come to terms, we come to understand the significance of this level of mochin in general, and particularly this higher level of mochin,
which you call etzem ha'inyan.
But it's focused on etzem ha'inyan. That is etzem ha'mochin. Etzem ha'mochin, which is focused on etzem ha'inyan. This is the essence of mochin itself, not mochin as they are presented in Levushe Hasoga. This is the mochin itself. This is an neshama element that we have in our mind, in our brain. Etzem ha'mochin. And this etzem ha'mochin recognizes inyonim atzmiyim. Essentially inyonim.
Rabbi, I'm just wondering, over here we call it, one time we called it, in this page, one time we called it mochin shebemidos, which is kirvas elikim litov, and in the past we called it middot shebemochin, kirvas elikim litov.
Right. That's not the... I'll let you sort this out yourself. This is not...
Also, is it we're saying it's shaykh mochin hashayachim al midos, and also it's mochin sheba midos. That's the same thing, right?
It's not identical, but yes, it's the same thing. It depends from each angle you're approaching it. We're not up to that. We're not up to that.
Last week we mentioned it.
Yeah, we mentioned it, but we're not up to this fine dissections.
I mean, it's coming up.
What?
It's coming up.
Are you curious? Is that bother you?
No, I'm not bothered. I
right? Yeah. Whatever we're able to touch upon as we go, it has to be something that we sense in our mochin. Yeah.
Rabbi PALTIEL.
Yeah. Yes, Baruch.
So you asked me to ask the question I asked you yesterday, the day before. I don't know if this is the place to ask.
Go ahead.
So, regardless which kind of mochin we're talking about here, my question was, how do we talk about moving from mochin to hasaga? We're using the expression hasaga, and we're talking about hasaga in alakus, right?
Yeah.
So my question was, how is it even possible to talk about being masig anything, and alakus being masig means you grasp the thing, and alakus by definition is something that's not graspable.
By definition.
Like we spoke about before, it's there's no such thing as time or space. It's above the galgal hachi. What does it mean to grasp this?
Okay. It is important for us to realize that despite the fact that we are in the world and our orientation and hasaga is all on a worldly level, in other words, we can dissect what we comprehend, what does it consist in, how did it come to be. Yet, on a more essential level, on a truth level, on a true human level, we sense a completely different reality than that which we can verbalize and we can actually express in words. We have multiple illustrations of this from what we already discussed in the past. As for example, ownership of a home, we pointed out, ownership of a home is not a natural worldly phenomenon. In world you own, there is a limit to this ownership. There's a significance in your usage and so forth. But if I climb into your attic and that disturbs you, that doesn't sound like a worldly experience. There already we see that this phenomenon of ownership is really a divine gift to the human being. As we pointed out, this comes from the Posuk Pru Mirozoretz V'Chipshua, because the Rebbe had gifted the world to the human being. In other words, this is a divine phenomenon. There's no compromise to this. It's not dependent on worldly experience. It's not describable in worldly terms. And we have in the past discussed many illustrations of this on the simplest level, on the very simplest level. You go to sleep in a comfortable bed. We should reflect on this. It's a phenomenal thing. No matter how comfortable the bed is, if it's at home, it's a different experience than it's in a hotel that you paid rent for. And you have all the mishoshim around you. They make you bed and they change your linen, everything.
And the bed is better quality.
And the bed is the best quality. You can never have that same experience as you have on the cot in your own home. There's something special about it. This something special is not a worldly construct, base. The world cannot provide this kind of reality, because the world is a precarious existence to begin with. The reality, a real thing, is only God. The world is not real to begin with. Therefore, he cannot provide this kind of reality. So that already exposes us. If you stop to think, you know that in our own experience, we recognize that there is a godly phenomenon in our own life. And if you ask in person, how do you approach Hasoga in Yom Velakus? You experience Yom Velakus on a constant basis. If only you stop to think and discern and recognize, hey, what's my life about? What's living mean? Of course, we don't do that. And to do that, we need guidance, and we cannot go on our own. But this is what the Rebbe is saying. If one is focused, and one is conscious of this, there is this element that you can be misboinen in this immunology. On the broader scale, we have our homes. And as we said many times, a home starts from a house. A house starts from a plot of land. The basis, a plot of land. And you have a place, and now you can put poles down and build a structure. That's how it starts. This plot of land, will you put up a house in any plot of land? Would you put up a house in the middle of the desert and then develop it into a home? Why not? So our worldly answer would be, hey, it's too hot, it's not comfortable, but we have air conditioning, and we can bring water, canalization, and we can develop it. There are people who are called nomads. They're interested just to move out of society, create their own outpost. and live in so to speak, in total isolation. But we don't say, hey, they're lacking some kind of human consciousness, of human experience of life, of the world. What are they missing? And taking this to a greater extreme, we can always find some kind of an explanation. Taking it to another extreme. Mars is a vast piece of land. No competition. You go up to Mars, and these days this is not out of reach. You get a couple $1 million, and you get a capsule bringing you to Mars, and then you're all on your own. You can build a palace. Of course, this is wild imagination, but there is something behind it. What's behind it is this. Before God created the Oretz, He created Shemayim. What's Shemayim relative to Oretz? Shemayim is the canopy that defines what on earth is suitable for inhabitants. If you take the earth out of the Shemayim canopy, you're in no man's land. You can build houses, but you're not in the place where God intended for people to live in. Our homes are built in the place not where there is available space and we can afford it. Where there's the divine plan, this is where human beings should occupy, should live. In other words, in our constant, all of our experiences, and the simplest or the more complex, there is a divine element behind it that makes it, that gives it spirit, that gives it reality. Since there is a divine element in all of our the basis of all our experiences, this is what gives it reality. Therefore, we have what to be misboinen in. If we are conscious and intelligent people, we stop and say, "Hey, what's this about?" Baruch, you heard it?
I wonder what that beep was.
What?
It was a beep.
Yes, I heard what you're saying. So you're emphasizing. I guess I'm getting hung up on the word hasoga. So you're saying the fact that you have something that's divine, that you can be misboinen on, like you just described.
Mm-hmm.
This is hasoga.
Well, if you misboinen this enough, it becomes something that you can actually relate to in your seichel. That's called hasoga. Even though it's
okay, relating to it in your seichel, to this such a thing. This is called hasoga.
That's right. You can identify it, and you know what you're talking about. Even though it remains high
beyond you.
It remains behind you, beyond you. That's right. This is what I'm saying.
But this which remains beyond you, we can nevertheless say you can be masig this union.
You're masig, but you do not translate it in your own terms. You do not limit it to your hasoga. You're masig something which is beyond hasoga.
Masig something which is beyond hasoga. Okay. And this is the divine element in a home is an example of such a thing that you can be masig.
That's right. In our home, in our street, on our feet, the shoes, Gemara says shoes are very important, more important than anything else. All these things define a human quality which is beyond our worldly seichel.
something.
And just to relate it to the other thing that you were just discussing, this kind of element is mochin the etzem.
Depends how you focus on it. It depends how you focus on it. You could focus on it from ultimately. That's where you should focus. Should be. You should what's mean mochin b'etzem? Recognize it not how it affects you, how it benefits you, but the divine presence in it. That's mochin b'etzem. This is not limited to your experience. This is a divine gift, and you recognize the gift element in it. Yes, 1 second. Yes.
Well, it's actually related to what you just said about mochin b'etzem. In the mashal of the home, we're going down from the home to the house to the piece of land, right? I remember from a couple of years ago, we went further and we said the piece of land is on earth, and what is earth? In other words, what is earth related to? And are we touching mochin b'etzem when we continue to push the mashal a little further? And in other words, there's earth, and then who creates the earth?
That's right.
Are we touching etzem here?
If your mochin extend to that, if you're just asking, I say it many times, there's a klotz kasha. If you're just asking because it's askable, then you're not involved in mochin. But if your mochin, your intellect brings you there, then yes, you're recognizing something beyond the limits of your experience. As we said, your home is wonderful, but if you think about it, there's a godly element in it. And this is why you occupy your home fully, every last inch of it, the minute it's your home, and you will not let anybody occupy the attic and the super attic. You'll never see it, you'll never use it at all, you'll never see it. And it'll be bothering you. Because it interferes, it counters the reality of this phenomenon.
Question. So, with the concept of im chalofatzi ba'aretz, you're talking about something etzem. On the other hand, it's a very personal statement. So that would be hasagas elokus. The im chalofatzi ba'aretz. It's nothing etzem, but it's that's a very personal statement. So that's like hasagas elokus.
Yeah. Where do all our understanding comes from our personal, from our neshama. Mm-hmm. If you recognize what the neshama really wants, then that's how mochin b'etzem.
Oh, b'etzem. You're saying b'etzem.
Okay.
Even though it's kirvas avikim li'tov, it sounds like you think.
All right.
What you were describing, that's not all the Vushi Hasaga?
Okay, this is what we're saying. We come to the point where you shed the levushi hasaga, and you're focusing on the Eloki element in it. Then you have what's called you focused on the etzem hamochin and the hasaga of the etzem ha'inyan. Etzem ha'inyan.
Mm-hmm. Which can be found in the Vushi Hasaga, but you're focusing on the etzem within that.
You can find it there, but to identify your seichel with it, it is not. There's no way you can identify your seichel with it. It's just because you see it, you see it. We pointed out yesterday by the Fabrengen that the first thing that the REBBE created, the first day of creation, after having created the Shomayim and Oretz, what was the first thing? Light. What's so significant about light? And this light had to be actually removed and has to be camouflaged. What's so significant about light? Light is what lets you see what's on the inside, what's real. Light is what exposes you to a divine truth in the world, not a tangible thing. And yet it's very real. This is why I explained many times, you've spoken about it many times. A witness, Apidin Torah, a witness is one who saw the occurrence. If he is witness to all kinds of, he called it circumstantial evidence, it's more than circumstantial. He actually said he said the bleeding knife and all that. He's not a witness. Because he sees it via his own experience rather than via what he's being shown. He doesn't belong. A witness is a witness. He's in Bezdin. A Bezdin is a Elikim. They represent God, the divine presence, and you're not a witness to that.
So that you wouldn't call, so the marshal of sight, you wouldn't call that Levusha Hasaga, that would be seeing the thing itself?
I'm saying, if you know it by Levusha Hasaga, which is, I see a bleeding knife, that's a Levusha Hasaga. I see a bleeding knife, that's a Levusha Hasaga. Okay?
But seeing the thing itself.
Then you're not a witness.
Rabbi?
Yes, sir.
I'm confused about your lashon there. You said it's what he saw it himself rather than what he's being shown. Before you said that that sight, the whole nature of sight is that we're being shown something.
Right.
Okay, so there's no contradiction. I mean, there's no dichotomy there. What he saw is what he's being shown. God is showing him the bloody knife. He's showing him.
No. Bloody knife. This is your interpretation.
It's a bloody knife.
Yeah, your interpretation. What does that signify? What does that make you think of?
Deduction.
You deduce that knife.
That's right. So that you didn't see the reality. Didn't see. That's right. That's exactly. She didn't see that this is all. You didn't see the reality itself. You saw it the way it makes sense to you. This is Bushyasog.
And that is not enough to be valid. That's not valid testimony. I never really understood that. It doesn't.
It's not valid testimony.
And it's not.
It's small. I'm not
invalid
explaining. No, because there's no way that you will know it unless you understand what it means to testify in a bezdin. In court of law, yes, it's valid testimony.
Okay.
But this is worldly law. Testimony in bezdin is hamishma le'lekimhu. The bezdin is sitting in front of God. It's telling God this is what happened. Not convincing human beings. It's a different phenomenon completely.
If it's before God, what is the need? What is the need for testimony at all?
Okay, Hostakasha. Okay, Hostakasha. Say the Rebbe gesagt, aber soll haben testimony. Like we pointed out, anything that has to do at that level, yes, you have to think. You have to find it in your intellect because the Rebbe gave you that intellect. And it's a divine gift. But if you're going to limit it to your own experience, then of course you're not going to have it. Now the Rebbe explains in the Sikha we learned Friday night that Yidden are kifsu achet meshim ze'evim, a sheep among 70 wolves. How does it survive? There's a divine canopy that protects it. But if you step out of that canopy, you want to be in the natural world, then you're exposed to all kinds of attacks. You cannot make sense of it with your own seichel. Of course not. But God tells you it's there. I mean, you see the divine presence, not the worldly structure. That's the union from seichel. That's called hasoga be'etzem hadover. We explained many times. Etzem does not exist in the world. The world does not create anything that's etzem. Etzem is the divine presentation into the world. A human being is an etzem in the world. This is why a human being, by God's decree, can own a piece of the world. Because he's an etzem, he's a real presence. There's no greater crime in Torah, no greater crime in the Torah than Rahman Islam taking the life of a human being. All right. So as I said, we are up to this line, and at the end of this line, okay, the line begins with the word kuli, and the line above it is hafshot. V'zeh bechinas ha-mechin atzman shel l'maylo ha'midas. This is mechin atzman that are above midas. Or l'maylo yosef. Here is where I misinterpreted, and I apologize, and I'm just pointing out. Or l'maylo yosef means that now we are going to explain this in the mechin atzman at a higher level than was presented till now.
That's okay.
It's a new approach.
Never would have guessed.
Huh?
I never would have guessed.
It's not in the same flow. It's going back to the beginning.
Yosef. Remind Yosef.
And this is where we are. This is where we're going to stop for now. Just wanted to correct my error. So don't you understand? This is not a single, this is going back to the beginning. Trying to, in explaining the Indian from Mechin Atzman, L'maylo yesh at a higher level, not just this is with void of Husha Hasoga, as we explained till now.
Excuse me, we're going to a higher level of explaining what?
Mechin B'Yetzem, Mechin Hasoga B'Yetzem.
We're not talking about it.
What?
No, I got it. I understand
Yeah.
what you're saying.
Okay, I didn't want to interrupt in the middle. I want to go back to what you mentioned at some point, the nomads. I happen to have spent 2 weeks in the desert,
Right.
in Sahara Desert, and I saw those people. They basically live, in other words, there's no property, there's no ownership of any land, because they move from one place to another, and they move from one place to another where there is water.